Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Cristin, lifestyle vlogger, mom of 2 little boys, and today I want to talk about my tubal ligation and how I feel about it 3 years later. So I had my tubal ligation after I had my C-section, well, technically during my C-section with my second baby, which was 3 years ago. During a tubal ligation with a C-section, they take out more of your fallopian tube than they would with like regular fallopian tube surgery. Like normally when they go in through like your belly button, I guess they aren't able to take out as much as they do with your C-section. So that being said, like, do I regret it and how do I feel about it? I guess also we could talk a little bit about the healing process with this, since I had the healing along with the C-section. So the healing, guys, like the C-section itself, for being a planned C-section, my emergency C-section was a train wreck to heal from, okay? But like my planned C-section, which was my last one, the healing for the C-section itself was fine, okay? Like by the end of the week, I was outside doing lawn work. Like, probably shouldn't have been doing it, but it was. Like, I felt really good. Within a full month, I was like, I would say like nearly 100%, if not like 90% myself. Like, by the end of 2 months, definitely fully recovered. However, healing from the tubal ligation part, I felt like was kind of rough. Like it was more painful than the actual C-section itself. Like I could just feel like about where my ovaries are at, like just like a pinching sensation. If you're one of those people who can feel when you ovulate, I am one of those people. It was like feeling that constantly. Like normally when I ovulate, it's like a quick pinch. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start my period in a couple weeks. And like, that's kind of it. And I might have some cramping like leading up to my period. But the most uncomfortable part is that quick little pinch when like the egg releases. I felt that like nonstop for a couple of weeks. I was like, somebody was just constantly pinching my fallopian tubes. This was, of course, after I was off of the pain medication. Like I think I had like a week or two's worth of pain medication for post-surgery. And then after that, I wasn't feeling any pain from my C-section, but I was still feeling pain from where I would imagine my fallopian tubes are at. And it's a pain that I did not feel after my first C-section. So the recovery, I wouldn't say was rough, but like the pain was more noticeable and longer lasting than I expected it to be, definitely. The reason I decided to have my fallopian tubes done, I've got like a whole laundry list of reasons, but some of the top ones, me and my husband's age. I'm still young enough to be having babies. My husband, though, like we have an 8-year age difference. Currently, I'm 33. So like if we'd gone for a third child, I would say last year or this year, like I'd be wanting to get that on the roll, right? Like our youngest is 3 now. Preferably, I like our oldest and youngest are like right at 3 years apart. They're like 2 years and 9 months. So ideally, if we'd had a third child, I'd have liked to have kept about the same age gap. But I still felt like I was getting too old to carry another pregnancy because I had had a few minor complications with my last one. One of those being high blood pressure. I had to be on high blood pressure medication for like, I think at least half the second trimester and like the full third trimester. And they had to keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't develop, what is it called? I can't think of what it's called. It just went right in my head. It's for like Preeclampsia. They had to keep a check on me for preeclampsia, so that was kind of scary. Thankfully, the high blood pressure medication they put me on took care of everything, and I had no further complications. But it was still scary to have going on during pregnancy. And then the very last month of my pregnancy, I developed I developed pregnancy-related carpal tunnel, and I would have my arms go numb from like my shoulders down to my fingertips. So just like the whole thing on both sides. I could not sleep. I remember my OBGYN at one point saying, try sleeping on your couch. And my thought was, you are way overestimating my couch. Like our couch was secondhand and it was not very good to sit on, let alone try to sleep on at the time. So that was just miserable. Like I pretty much did not sleep my last month of pregnancy. because my arms kept falling asleep. It was awful. Further that up with just like kids are expensive, and like my husband didn't want to have any more kids. And like I said, my husband and I have like an 8-year age gap. And anytime I bring that up, our ages, people be like, well, you're still young enough, like you're under 35. Because if you're over 35, it's geriatric and it's more high risk. But my husband is considerably older than me. Like I am 32 and he is 40. So like, let's say that we had a kid now, like he would be 60 before that kid was even 20 years old. So it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, you know? And again, like the ages for having babies, that's all a personal thing. I'm not here to judge anybody who has chosen who's either chosen to have children later in life, or like that's just how things worked out for you. Like, I'm not here to judge, okay? I'm not in your shoes. Like, it's not my business, okay? But for me personally, and for my husband personally, we were able to have our children younger. For me, I was 25 and 28 having our boys, and my husband was in his mid-30s. We just decided like it was better off to do that, so that when we're older, like we can actually enjoy being empty nesters and retiring and not having teenagers in the home that we're still trying to take care of. So there's like a whole laundry list of reasons I have, and I've got a whole other video talking prior to getting my tubes tied and the reason I was doing it, if you're interested, where I go more in depth for my reasoning. And I definitely think it is important to have a list of reasons for why you're having your tubes tied, because it's so easy to get baby fever and then start feeling regret of like, man, I have another baby right now, but I got my tubes tied. Because trust me, that happens all the time with me, where I see little squishy babies, or somebody's having a baby shower and I have to go baby stuff, and I'm like, I want another baby. Like, it's so easy to have it happen. And just to get caught up in the whimsical, ooey gooey fluffy unicorns and butterflies part of having babies, and it's so easy to forget the difficult parts. And you just want to remember the good. And I think that's how a lot of people end up with more than one kid. But we just decided for us that 2 was enough. Honestly, like when my husband and I had very first started dating, we had a conversation about, do you want to have kids? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I think like 2. And he's like, 2's good for me. And that was just kind of like our plan from the beginning, was like 2 kids and we're done. So I had a list of reasons for why I wanted to have my tubes tied. And now that I am in my 30s, and considering some issues I just had with my past menstrual cycle, I can honestly say I do regret having my tubes tied, but not for the reasons you may think. Not to do with wanting more babies. Actually, after this last pregnancy scare, like, it really hit me that I really don't want more kids. Like, I'm happy with what we have, and getting rid of all the baby stuff, I'm happy to do. I've been doing it for a while. And the panic and the idea of like having to repurchase all that stuff, and then like the up all nights and the formula, and like we're almost about ready to be done with diapers, and like we're so close to be done with all of that. Like having another baby would just be like taking a step backwards. Like I just don't even right now want to mess with any of that. I'm looking forward to my kids getting into school full time. My oldest already is, and then me being able to get like a job and a career and start bringing in money, and like how much that's just financially going to catapult us. And that's within like the next 2 years, 2-year plan. My youngest is going to be in kindergarten, and I'm planning, so he'll be full time. I'm planning on getting a CDL license to hopefully get on as a bus driver where my kids go to school, and then in between that, I could also substitute teach and like drive bus in the morning, go teach class, drive bus in the evening. Like that's kind of my ideas. And, or doing lunch lady, bus driver, lunch lady. Like, I don't know, but I'm very much so looking forward to my kids going into the next stages and coming out of the baby and toddlerhood and kind of closing that chapter. Like I definitely feel ready for it. So my reasons for regretting it though, and I'm not going to leave any links below to the articles that I was reading, because, and I did a lot of research in the last like 3 to 4 weeks. I felt like it was like throwing darts at a board, Like every article had similar but not exact results and information in it. So if this is something you're curious about, I highly recommend talking to your own doctor and doing your own research. In fact, I would say do your own research first so you have questions, then go talk to your doctor. Because there's some things I wish I would have asked my doctor prior to having the surgery. One of which, and I do remember talking to her a little bit about it, but getting pregnant after having your fallopian tubes removed, which is the surgery that I had. I didn't have clamps done. I had my fallopian tubes cut and soldered. Like they should be gone. And like I said, it was done during C-section, so they took out even more than they would normally. So, from the research I was doing, it turns out that you have like, if you are 28 or younger, you have I think it was like a 5% chance of getting pregnant after having your fallopian tubes tied. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a viable pregnancy. When you do have your fallopian tubes tied, you have a higher risk of having a tubal pregnancy, which is where the egg implants in your fallopian tubes versus your uterus. And I remember talking about that with my doctor, and my doctor was like, you don't really need to worry about that, because if that happened, you just have as much chance of it being in your uterus. I don't know, because she's the only person who's told me I have just as much chance of it being in my uterus versus my fallopian tubes, or what's left of them, in comparison to the articles I found online where it said that there's more likely a chance of being in fallopian tubes. And now to know that there's a 5% chance, like I always thought when you got your fallopian tubes removed, I always thought you had like 1% chance of pregnancy. I thought it was like less than 1%. Kind of like when you use birth control, if you take it correctly, it's supposed to be like a 1% chance. Same with like condoms, if used correctly, it's supposed to be like a 1% chance. Like I thought it was like a much higher chance, like less, you know what I'm saying? Like I thought it was much less chance of pregnancy having your fallopian tubes tied. But now that I know that if you're 28 or younger, having them done, you have a 5% chance. I don't like those odds, okay? Those make me uncomfortable. I don't like it. And so ever since finding that out, like I have been paranoid about getting a pregnancy in my fallopian tubes. And the reason for that is because those can rupture and you can bleed out and die. Like it's not a good time, okay? And it really has me kind of wishing that I had gone back to birth control, honestly. Or that my husband would have gotten a vasectomy. Like, I'm kind of, and the only reason he didn't get a vasectomy is because I was already getting a C-section and they're already going to be in there. So it's like, go ahead and take them out, you know? But given how painful it was to recover from, again, like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it was like a 5. Like, it was uncomfortable, but manageable with like Tylenol. And it was more of an annoyance than anything, but it went on for a while. On top of that, and I found out recently that it's not normal because one of my best friends and my cousin have had fallopian tubes removed as well. Every month since having my fallopian tubes taken out on my left side, periodically throughout the month, I will get sharp stabby pains. And that's been since I had them taken out, and I just kind of assumed it was normal. And I was recently talking, like I said, with my cousin and my friend, and they're like, we don't have that. And I'm like, I sure do. And it's not the same as having the egg release, because I'll feel that and it alternates. Like sometimes it's on the right side, sometimes on the left side. It's a quick little pinch, it's over and done with, right? And it's normally about 2 weeks before I start my period. I shouldn't be having pinching pains all month long, like periodically. Like they're not like a consistent thing like they were during the healing process. But it's like here and there throughout the month, I'll tell like it feels like somebody just gave me a titty twister on my fallopian tube or whatever's left of it, which now has me paranoid that like what if my left side fallopian tube is growing back, because it's normally on the left side that I get that pinch. Which sometimes your fallopian tubes can grow back. I didn't know about that, which again has me paranoid about getting an ectopic pregnancy, because if your fallopian tubes grow back, you have a higher chance still of getting an ectopic pregnancy. So because of all of that, if you're thinking about getting your fallopian tubes removed and you're in your 20s, do research. Don't just talk to your doctor. Do research and then talk to your doctor. Bring all these, because there's like things from like, it's not called Med One, it's Med something online, and there's different articles you can find that are from reputable sources. do your research, look into it. Like if you're, and that's the weird thing with the 5% chance of pregnancy is like I was 28 and then turned 29 when I had my fallopian tubes taken out. So I was like right on that cusp, because I think like 29 and up is supposed to be like a 2% chance. So I'm like, where do I fall on that? Am I at the 5% chance or the 2% chance? Because you know there's not going to be like an exact, you know? So it just makes me nervous. And also to find out like after 10 years you have a higher chance of getting pregnant. Like, good Lord. If I'm like 38 getting pregnant, my husband's gonna be like 50. Okay. That's like a huge age, not huge age gap. That's like a, could you imagine being 50 and having a newborn? Right? Like that's not something anybody, I'm not saying nobody wants it, but like we don't want it, you know? Like that's, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So for all those reasons, like I've had myself paranoid, and we'll go ahead and bring myself back, because like, okay, like the last 3 years I've had moments where I'm like, I want another baby, and like there's always going to be that little part of my brain that's got baby fever, that's like, oh, they're cute and they're just squishy and they smell good and I just want to snuggle one right here, and like, you know, babies, you know, like there's always gonna be that little part of me that's just irrational and just give me another baby. And then I have my logical side that I follow through with, that had the whole list of reasons for like why I wanted to get my fallopian tubes taken out. And anytime my irrational side is like, oh, babies, I revert back to this side with the list, and it's like, no, here is a legitimate and good reason, list full of them, for why we don't want more babies. And so I always went back to that. Anytime I'd start feeling like, maybe I shouldn't have got my tubes tied, maybe we could have had a third, maybe, and then I go back to that, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like a good list of why we didn't want a third. So part of that, random, but part of that being like everything is made for like twos, okay? Like you take your kid, like back seats. I mean, okay, a lot of them have like the third seat, but like whoever really wants to ride in the third seat, right? And like with my car, for the back seat, the cup holders are in the middle. So like if we had a third kid back there, like we couldn't, nobody have a cup holder, okay? And then you go into theme parks and like state fairs and there's rides to ride. They're normally two-seaters, which means somebody gets to sit in the back behind everybody else, you know, like everything's paired off. And then like our house, like I don't even know where we'd put a third kid. Like my husband would have to give up his home office, which he works from home 2 to 3 days a week, and like I don't even know where we would put his office supplies at. Like I don't even know. So it would just like turn our lives upside down. So with all that being said, for the last 3 years, pretty much, I have been pretty happy with having my fallopian tubes taken out until recently. I had back towards the end of July, it was after my cycle, maybe 2-3 weeks after, I had spotting, which looked very similar to implantation bleeding, the same kind that I had with my first pregnancy. And I was like, that's odd. That shouldn't be happening. Just very light little brown specks when I went to the bathroom. A couple weeks later, I was noticing light nausea and I was noticing soreness in my breasts, and I was like, that's not good. So I took a pregnancy test, and I can put it on the screen if you'd like to see it in person. Okay, it was positive. Okay, I had 2 positives. In person, they were much darker, not much, like it was still a very light positive even in person, but like it was much more noticeable in person. My camera did not want to focus on the pregnancy sticks. So I've noticed like if you have poor eyesight, like you're not gonna be able to see those blue lines. But like 2 of my friends, my cousin and my friend's mom have all seen them, and like that's a positive test. My husband and my mom, on the other hand, like my mom was like, I kind of see it. And my husband was like, that's a negative. I don't see anything. So let me know what you think. I'm seeing 2 very faint blue lines. And again, keep in mind that like it was more noticeable in person than it is in the picture. So that happened. And let me say, like at first I was like, I don't know what to make of this, because I have had my fallopian tubes taken out and I should not be able to get pregnant, and it kind of me freaking out. And I'm like, is it a positive? Is it a false positive? Is it negative? And I'm just like delusional. So I stored them underneath of the bathroom sink just to think on it for a little bit before I said anything to my husband or anybody else. You know, that's like where the cleaning supplies are at. I didn't think my husband would find it. My husband found it 3 hours later, and I'm still questioning what that man was doing in the bathroom cabinet because he didn't clean anything. So like, why were you in there? Anyway, during that time frame, I sent the pictures to some friends and was like, what are you guys seeing? I know what I'm seeing. Like, tell me I'm crazy. And my husband found it, and he was like, you know, why is there a pregnancy test? And I'm like, it's positive. And he's like, no, it's not. I don't see a line. So let me know what you think in the comments. But like 3 days after that, and it was an early pregnancy test that I took. 3 days after that, and I also ended up being like a week late on my cycle. So like 3 days after that, I started my period, and it was kind of weird. Like, it started off super light halfway through the day on a Monday, which is normally if I start, it's like in the morning. And Tuesday was like regular flow. Wednesday, like towards the evening, it just like got really heavy and I had like a lot of clotting come out. It was kind of crazy. And then it tapered off. Thursday was like regular to light, and then Friday it just stopped. And I'm like, that's not normal for me. It's normally I start on like a Friday or a Saturday, and like the first day is super light, and the second day it's like floodgates open and it's heavy for like 2 to 3 days, and my whole cycle lasts like 7. Like, so it was kind of weird. And especially having, like, I had no clotting with exception to Wednesday evening. It was like 5 or 6 o'clock, and I went to the bathroom because I felt like I was leaking out of my tampon, and it was just like clots everywhere. So should I have gone to the doctor? Probably, but like, I'm in the United States and that's expensive. So not to mention, I had some issues with my menstrual cycle earlier in the year and into late last year, and I'm still paying the medical bills from that. Like, I don't want to, like, I still have like $450 I owe for an internal ultrasound, which is not fun to get done, for my last go around with issues. So we finally got my cycle all straightened out and everything was good, and here we are. And I'm like, I don't want to owe $800 for ultrasounds, you know, like. And the kicker to that one was that they found nothing. That one was recommended by my general practitioner. They found nothing wrong with me internally. Sent me to my OBGYN, and she was like, oh, you didn't even need to have that done. So I was like, great. I had a procedure I didn't need that I'm now paying for. Fantastic. And in case you're wondering, it turned out that getting the COVID shot last year threw off my cycle, and my cycle never got back on track. At least that's the running theory. And so they gave me some meds that turned my cycle off, turn it back on, and like everything's been back in working order. So anyway, I haven't gone to the doctor because of that, but I've been hyper aware of like my body and like my lady parts, and just very like any little sensation or anything, and I'm like, what is that? What is going on? Since the bleeding, I took one more early response, and that one came back like a very strong negative. And then I've taken 2 more like dollar store tests, like the kind you find at Dollar Tree, but I got them at Dollar General, but they look like the ones from Dollar Tree. And those ones, in my experience with having my boys, were always negative until I was like a full month past my last cycle. I took one a couple days ago. It was negative. I've taken like one a little bit later, and it was negative. Like, they've all been negative. But starting last night, I started having like a pinching pain on my left-hand side around where like it feels like my ovary should be, and it has me concerned. I'm like, is there something implanted in there? Do we need to be going to the doctor? Because like, if that ruptures, you bleed out. But also, like, if there's nothing there and you're just psychotic, like, you just wasted another $400 on an ultrasound that you didn't need. So I'm stressed, okay? Like, if I had just gone on regular birth control, I wouldn't be concerned with ectopic pregnancies and possibly dying. And like, if I did end up pregnant, like, it wouldn't be ideal, but at least it would likely be in my uterus and be healthy versus whatever this was. Like, I don't know. Am concerned, am a little worried. No longer happy with the surgery I had done. I'm kind of wishing I hadn't done it. So there's my 2 cents on it. Personally, now that I've done a little more research, which I should have done it before I had the procedure done, if you're in your 20s, do research before you get your fallopian tubes tied, even if you don't want more kids. Like, I'm not on here saying like, oh, you might change your mind. Like, that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the facts that you're at a higher risk of pregnancy if you have your fallopian tubes taken out in your 20s than you are if you're into your 30s and 40s, and that you're at a higher risk of having an ectopic pregnancy, which can be lethal to you. They are not like viable pregnancies. They will not turn into a baby. Like, it's just not a good time for anybody, okay? So I'm not trying to come on here and like fearmonger and scare anyone who's thinking about it. Do your own research, come up with your own conclusions, talk to your doctor. But just be mindful, because I did not realize I was at a higher risk of pregnancy being in my 20s having it done versus being more into my 30s to 40s. If I had known that, like if you were talking like a 1 to 2% chance, okay, take them out. Like, we're good. You know, like that's like in your 30s, your 40s, you know, it keeps dropping down, less and less likely you'll get pregnant. Finding out I got a 5% chance, I don't like those odds. Like I said, not happy. I mean, it's still low, but it's still higher than I'm comfortable with. And also the research I've done, I found different numbers on it, so take it for what you will. But I found several sources that have said that like 1,000 women in the United States a year, that's every year, okay? I'm assuming that's new people every year, get pregnant after having their fallopian tubes taken out. That's not saying they're viable pregnancies. They very well could be ectopic pregnancies, but that's 1,000 women a year in the United States alone getting pregnant after a tubal ligation. And that's 1,000 new women every year, okay? Like, I don't like those odds. If I had known that, I would have waited on having a tubal ligation done. I would have done it when I was older. And I would have went on birth control. Just because if I am to get pregnant, like I said, I don't want more babies. Like, this has been a big wake-up call for me of like, because I really went down the rabbit hole of like, crap, we're going to have to rebuy everything. Like, if this is like, if these tests are positive and it's like for real, like we're gonna have to rebuy everything and like all the newborn stuff that comes up with it. Like, I just, you know, it's a lot. It's like, babies are great and they're sweet, but they are a lot of work. Okay. Like in the toddler years, we had my oldest boy. We now know he's ADHD. We did not know that when he was a toddler. And my God, that child was off the walls. Like he gave me gray hair probably. I don't think I could handle another one of them. I love him so much, but oh my God. Thankfully, my second child has been a much calmer toddler. However, like, he's nonverbal, so we've got issues going on with that, which is another reason for why we didn't want to have more kids. Granted, at the time when we had our second, we didn't know that he was going to be nonverbal. And also with my oldest boy at the time, he was like just shy of 3 and we didn't know he had ADHD. But we knew he was struggling with something. And so we're just like, genetically speaking, we're just making kids that got some problems going on. And hopefully like we've seen huge improvement with my oldest boy since getting him on medication. Like we're managing it. We're learning about ADHD, how to parent ADHD. Like, we're getting through it. Like, we've had a lot of improvement just with getting the diagnosis alone. But now we're trying to figure out what's going on with my youngest boy. He's been diagnosed with apraxia. Hopefully we can get him talking. I don't know. I've seen some videos of people who are like older, like teens, and either like their speech is really slurred and delayed, or they're just not talking. And it stresses me out that that's going to be my little boy. Like, it's a lot to deal with. Like, it's a lot. And I'm like, if we have a third kid, I feel like we've got just as much chance that they would also have some problems. So all good reasons for why we didn't want more. That being said, if I did end up getting pregnant and it was viable, like, I think every baby should be celebrated and we would keep them and love them, and like we would readjust our lives. Okay. But as far as like our plans are concerned, we're done and we're happy to close that chapter. So just something to think about. That's just been my experience of having my tubes cut and burned and removed. If anything significant happens, this little pinchy pain I have going on my left-hand side, I will make a vlog about it and I will let you know until further notice. Don't worry about me. I'm sure I'm fine. I'm just paranoid, I'm sure. But that's everything that's been going on with me, and that's, you know, my thoughts and opinions on getting a tubal ligation done. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on it. Have you had it done? Have you had the pinchy pains that I've had ever since getting them taken out? Have you had a tubal pregnancy? Let me know in the comments below. Also, what do you think about that pregnancy test? What's going on with that? Tell me I'm crazy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Again, I am a lifestyle vlogger. If you want to come be my internet friend, hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I just appreciate the engagement. Come hang out with me in the comments below. I love talking with you guys. I always try to respond. I hope to catch you guys in my next video.